Right. It is not sharing the right screen. Hold on, guys. All right, it is 1:01, so want to welcome you all to What's Happening Wednesday. For those that it's Thursday, happy Thursday to you. Have a few people. Just kind of curious before we get started, how many of you, is this their first What's Happening Wednesday? Anyone want to admit to that? Oh, a few raise hands. Nice, cool. Okay, welcome. Welcome. So we will definitely kick off this meeting. I definitely hope this is the funnest meeting you've ever been to and most different meeting you've ever been to. That's our goal, but you're also hoping that you learn a lot. So we'll just throw that out there. My name is Penny. I will be one of your hosts. Our second host is going to be Leon, and let's go ahead. Leon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Penny said, so I'm Leon. Those of you who I haven't met, I'm the IRC Education Outreach Specialist. And I also play a role as being a science fair judge, and helping with judging all the projects that get to the senior division chief level. So happy to be here and happy to introduce our speakers coming up too.
So for those that are new to What's Happening Wednesday, what are we doing and why are we here? This is an employee-led event. It started from a collaboration between NOAA Pyro and NOAA Fisheries. I know we've invited quite a few other line offices and programs to join us. So welcome to your first What's Happening Wednesday. Yes, you do have to say it like that too. And we're here to really share, connect, coordinate, learn about each other and each other's work. So we're trying to make this super interactive. We would like questions, we would like engagement. We're not gonna just do a PowerPoint for an hour. And I do have a little bit of an update for those that have been here before. We have changed the format a little bit based on your feedback. And so we will be not doing any breakout rooms. So no breakouts, you don't have to leave, you don't have to like hide and run away. Anything that we ask questions, you can go ahead and put in the chat, or if people want to speak up, they can raise their hand and unmute yourself. So totally informal. I hope you guys learn a lot. And yeah, let's get started. So we're gonna do our first question to the group. What was your favorite TV show, book growing up? Any science related shows that you watched, or maybe some books you read? You want to just stick it in the chat, share with others? Nobody wants to admit any. Yep, okay. Some support from Magic School Bus. Sesame Street. Nice. Magic School Bus. All right, cool. So definitely feel like we all read and watched a lot of science programs, and that probably influenced us. So great. Crocodile Hunter. Wizard's World. I don't even know if I know that one, Cherry.
That's Mr. Wizard's World.
Thank you for that clarification. Nice. All great things. All right. So Leon, do you want to kick us off a little bit about what we're talking specifically about today?
Sure. Thanks, Penny. So maybe just to start off and continue what's going on in the chat, maybe you can take yourself back in time and think about what your middle or high school science fair project was. So if anyone wants to share that in the chat, that would be great. You can sort of go down memory lane. And as folks are populating their science fair projects back in the day, I kind of just wanted to give people a little preview of different science fair projects that students have worked on that are connected with NOAA. So today is all about how do NOAA staff get engaged with the Hawaii State Science Fair. And so I just wanted to start off by showing right now, since it's all virtual, there's an ability to actually go online and see what types of science fair projects students are working on. So here's just a small snippet of some of the examples that you see up there. And then we also want to, we'll highlight in just a little bit our speakers. Number one, Mari, who had a science fair project, and then she's going to talk a little bit about her experience right now, kind of going through science fair, and now she's a Hollings Prep intern. So yeah, just to give you guys a quick flavor of what is there, I will copy and paste into the chat if anyone is interested. You can check out different NOAA student related projects on your own time too. So going to the next slide, a neat thing now that we have moved virtual is we have the ability to put up content on a virtual corner that that the Hawaii Academy of Science has given us. So there's a place called Student Corner that's online. You can see the link there in the chat, which I'll also copy and paste. And this is kind of a repository where we're holding information about NOAA data, tools, information about NOAA careers, citizen science opportunities, any ways to engage students at the science fair and beyond of how they can kind of connect with NOAA. So we'll talk later on about ways that you can get engaged with the science fair project and science fair in general. But this is one of the means in terms of putting your information up on the site to share with students and teachers. All right, next slide. Thanks, Penny. In terms of like, when is all of this happening? So we'll get a chance to maybe revisit this at the end of the talk too. But if anyone is interested in getting involved, really this is the opportune moment, right? School year just started and students are looking to reach out to mentors, advisors who might help them with their science fair projects. So there's different ways you can get involved depending on your time. You can do anything from just being an advisor to a student. So they might have a question about a specific science topic that's connected to their project, all the way to being a mentor. And we'll hear from Don today who'll talk about his kind of mentoring experience. But if you just have a little bit of time, you can be an advisor, you can be a mentor, you can take students through the whole process of guiding them through their project. You can be a NOAA judge, judging science fair projects. And then finally, you can also be involved in potentially offering a internship for students over the summer too. So those are just different ways that, and we'll talk a little bit about them later as well. We can go ahead to the next slide. Oh, I preempted this conversation. Sorry, Penny. Some people have already put that in the chat. This is me not reading the notes, annoying. But yeah, if people have their middle or science fair project, and maybe a question beyond this that maybe we can type into the chat and have some discussion is, what was your experience with your mentor as it relates to your science fair project? So if people can type their experience with their mentor, maybe, that maybe will set the scene to some of the conversation that we'll be having. So we'd love to hear on not just your project itself, but what was your mentor like? What role did your mentor play in your science fair projects?
We're definitely getting some good ones, from owl pellets to people watching at Walmart. That's great. And just to, the Hawaii Science Fair does have the ability for homeschool students to participate as well. So, you know, if you want to be a mentor for those Walmart projects, should definitely look into that, Ashley.
Anything else in the chat, Penny, to highlight?
M&Ms, everything. We looked like people did a lot of different things. Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for sharing their experiences. That's awesome. So I do want to introduce the stars of today's show in terms of both the mentor perspective and the student perspective. So I'll first introduce Don, who a lot of you might know. Don, you can do a quick intro for yourself if you'd want.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Really happy to be here. I love what's happening Wednesday. Usually enjoy watching it or working behind the scenes. So at this point, I'm more like a deer in the headlights because I'm one of the panelists. But pleased to be here. I'm a research fishery biologist at the Fisheries Science Center. I've been there for not very long, 34 years or so. I do mostly fisheries, oceanography related things, but also kind of diversified for a lot of things. I have jack of all trades, and I'll leave out the master of none part, but I do all kinds of stuff. In the last 10 years or so, I've gotten a little more involved with students, and this has been grad students where I help advising or serve on graduate committees. for undergrads, and we're right in the midst of undergraduate summer intern season right now, which is very consuming for me. I'll put in a plug right now for next Monday. We're having our summer intern symposium. So if you're not aware of that yet, please look to the info or ask me if you haven't got the WebEx info yet. It's going to be a really cool event. We have about 26 speakers lined up for next Monday. And back to the topic of today, a lot of cool interactions lately have been with high school students, middle school students, elementary school students. A lot of this was spawned from IRC science fairs we used to do, and we would spin up a plankton module with some live plankton every year, and that tended to start networking with a lot of teachers and students for subsequent interactions. And I'll stop there, Leon, unless there was something more specific you wanted.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Don. And then our other speaker today is Mari Quinn. She's a UH, actually, it's funny, she's a UH Global Environmental Science major, which is a major I did, the same major back 20 plus years ago. So it makes me feel old to introduce you, Mari. And she can, go ahead, you can introduce yourself, Mari.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mariko Quinn, but I go by Mari. I am a rising sophomore at UH, majoring in global environmental science with a minor in political science. I did science fair starting in 8th grade and then throughout high school, and was lucky enough to win several different NOAA awards while I was there. And so that led me to the Hollings Prep program, where I'm currently an intern. Yeah.
Thanks, Mari. And maybe you can just delve a little bit more into, you know, your story. You talked very briefly about your story of starting young in the whole science fair process and being a Hollings Prep intern. Can you talk a bit more about, you know, part of that pathway and kind of what types of things you went through in those experiences?
Yeah, so I was always very interested in the ocean, and so all of my science fair projects were centralized on coral ecology and coral recovery and things like that. And so since I had such a niche project, I didn't always have a lot of people to talk to about it, and so the NOAA judges were always my favorite, and so this is kind of a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And so I was able to have a lot of conversations with these judges, and one of them ended up telling me about the Hollings Prep program when I was a senior in high school, and also about the NOAA Hollings program, which is why I ended up applying here. And so it was overall a very good experience to have the NOAA judges there.
Awesome. And I think there might be another slide too of some of the pictures that maybe describe a bit your experience. You want to talk to these a bit?
I think this is Dawn's slide, actually.
Oh, is this Don's slide? That's hilarious. As you can see, right? This is very on the fly here. So Dawn, why don't maybe if we can turn to you and tell us a little bit about your science fair experience. See, I thought this was Mari's slide, which is great. It's all sort of connected here.
Oh, okay. Thanks for keeping us thinking on our feet. So the question was, how did I get involved and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself, your kind of science fair experience. I mean, there's some images that you have up on the screen. Maybe you can talk to them at the same point, but just your pathway here. Yeah.
So kind of similar to a lot of NOAA scientists, as we've gone through graduate school, we get our masters or PhDs or whatever, we start thinking about whether we want to become, say, the professor type, the super instructor, the favorite teacher that we all had. We want to follow that path, or is the science drawing us? But for myself, the marine science was always the most fascinating thing for me. So I tended down this pathway of being a scientist and not really having a whole lot of interaction with students. But over the years, and especially they say, you know, the grass is always greener, you kind of have this longing for interaction with the younger generation, maybe some transfer of knowledge. So you look for opportunities to kind of give back to the system and try to share some of your knowledge. And that's one of the things that in recent years I've been able to try to find opportunities. And a lot of times it's on my own time. So yeah, you're looking at some activities that were done on my own time. Clearly, it was on my own time because we don't have any TFDs on my boat. Well, we do have them, but we're just not wearing them because it was so hot. You can't easily or comfortably do all that. But it was on my own time. On my own boat, we would do some plank and toes and help support some of the science projects that students were doing. This tended to be mostly windward side. So the cool thing about today is that Mari and I have pretty similar geographic experiences. She's going to talk a lot about their windward side experiences, and most of my interactions with students have been, say, at Windward District Science Fairs or Kapuku. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Great, thank you, Don. It's a great story, and thanks for getting involved. So, Mari, I have a question for you. As kind of thinking back to your time as a science fair participant, what was the biggest challenge that you had that you maybe weren't prepared for?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I think the biggest challenge for me was finding people who understood my project. And so then I kind of had to learn how to basically be a better scientific communicator. My very first science fairs, I didn't know how to talk about the things that I was really excited about, but I didn't understand that people had no idea what I was trying to speak on. And so I really kind of had to adjust and teach myself how to explain my project in a way that everybody could understand and so that they could be as excited about them as I was. And so a lot of the areas where I needed the most help was with communication, because I had a very large tendency to just get excited and go on and on about data that nobody understood and didn't make sense to a lot of people. And this is kind of a big problem in science fair because you don't know where your judges are coming from or really what background they have. Especially at the district science fairs, you tend to get a lot of teachers from other schools and things like that, and they might have no idea what coral bleaching is. And so it's really hard to gauge how much background you have to give somebody and how much information they have to have. And so that was the biggest challenge for me, was kind of figuring out how to do that communication.
And I will admit that's still a struggle for many of us as we continue on our career. So that's great that you were able to identify it and try to work through that, and realize that, yeah, a lot of people might not know what you're talking about, and you have to get those words across. All right, let's check the chat. Do we have any questions for Mari or Dawn in the chat?
I don't see any right now, Penny, but yeah, feel free to type in chat, folks. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so we'd love to hear from you.
So our next set of questions, we kind of mentioned earlier, right? You can be a judge, you can be a mentor, you can get involved to talk about district level. So Dawn, from your advice, like what is the best time for NOAA if there's a scientist that wants to get involved, be a mentor? When is the best time for them to get involved?
Well, from my perspective, I like being involved early, and for a couple of reasons. It lets you kind of be involved at the classroom level when you're actually working with some of the kids in the class. It's a kind of natural side. You get really good interactions going. It also lets you start to brainstorm maybe science fair projects from the ground level and help brainstorm along with the student some ideas that they want to turn into a science project. And working at the district level versus the state level lets you see a good contrast of projects, not just the cream of the crop. I mean, the cream of the crop is really cool and super impressive and amazing, but working with some of the students that are maybe not going to make it even out of their classroom, or the ones that won't make it out of district, Windward District or Leeward District, I find that really rewarding because it could expose a lot of these students that may not get much subsequent exposure to scientists, and it's a good opportunity for them. So that's my soapbox, is getting in early and working with the classrooms and at the district level.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Dawn. And so, Mari, you already talked a little bit about how the judges really impacted you, right? They told you about future opportunities. It was great for them. to have a conversation. What about you? What do you think is the best time for NOAA scientists to get involved in the whole science fair process?
Yeah, so I definitely think that it depends on kind of how much time and space you have to help with a project. But I think one of the biggest times that could actually be really helpful to have some extra mentorship and help is in between the district and state level. So students who qualify for state, they'll already have a project established already, but it can be really helpful to kind of have a new perspective come in and give advice on how to present your topic, and have advice on even new data that can be collected in that span of time that students have. Just really a lot of suggestions on how to improve the project going into state. Um, Another, like John mentioned, getting in early is really, really impactful, especially for students like me coming from public schools. We don't have the resources that a lot of other schools do. And so a lot of students, even if they're really interested in science and want to do science fair, will not have a mentor available to them, which was the case for me. And so I ended up having to cold call like scientists and people in the community to try to find a mentor. But if students aren't doing that, they probably won't have that personalized support. So if you have the time and you're willing to, it would be really incredible and really impactful for students to have somebody that early on.
I'm very impressed. You called people and asked them to be your mentor. I don't think I would have had the confidence to do that at your age. So congrats to you. How often did you meet with your mentor, and what kind of things did you guys talk about?
So I ended up being really lucky. First of all, I'm surprised that anybody even calls as a confident sophomore in high school, but I was lucky and I had a really great mentor, and he and I got along really well, and I ended up being an intern in his lab for the next like 3 years, and I'm still working there now. So I worked with him quite a bit. Probably I would say for the first couple of years, my projects were a little bit more scaled down. So it was only like once a month-ish, and then just emails like on and off throughout the month. But then my senior year, I did a very involved project, and that was about a year of very frequent meetings and planning and things like that. So it really kind of depends on the scale of the project.
Great. We did just get a question from Jennifer in the chat, which kind of plays into that. How many months did you spend on your projects each year?
So I think my senior year, I had a vision for that project from like the summer before my senior year, and so I actually started in June prior to my senior year, and I collected data from June through December. And so that was kind of a unique scenario in which I was kind of just running my own project. The normal timeline is that you kind of start thinking of a project in about September, and then collect data between like October to December-ish, depending on what you're doing. And then you spend December to January writing everything up, and then you do districts in February, and then you have a couple months to kind of prep, and then you do states in April.
Excellent, thanks. All right, I can't see Leon anymore. I have too many screens open to see if he's unmuted himself. So maybe I'll just ask the next question to Dawn, and then I'll hand it back over to Leon. So Dawn, what was your most memorable time being a mentor and working with the science fair?
Thanks, Goody. Good question. I'll probably talk about a couple of things here. I think one of the memorable moments that tends to reoccur too often is when you're judging these posters at science fair, whether it's in person or virtually, it's just how smart some of these kids are. And that threshold seems to be getting younger and younger and younger, to the point where there's quite a few posters that I just cannot understand. And luckily in the virtual world, at least like the all-knowing internet to help me out sometimes. But when you're standing in front of a poster, you barely understand it, and you're maybe 4 times older than this student talking about it, it's a little intimidating and memorable. The other Another good single example I have is one of the earliest interactions I had was with this young lady from Kahuku Intermediate. She came to one of our science fairs at RC, and she was totally in the background. She was very shy and quiet and kind of short, I think. So nobody she never caught our attention, but she was apparently super fascinated by the live plankton module. And she was so fascinated by plankton, she chose to do her science fair project on plankton maybe a year or two later. And she got in touch and I helped her out. She was toying a small plankton net from her surfboard somewhere on the upper windward side. It's pretty amazing stuff she was trying to pull off. Sadly, I don't think she made it past district, even not even sure she made it to district. And yeah, you can blame me for that. I blame myself for that. But she continued on in science, and we still stay in touch. And she's working on her environmental geology degree at BYU in Utah. And I'll be the first to admit that my role was probably minuscule in all of her career development, but things like that really do kind of warm the heart. So it's really cool and memorable interaction. And there's others like that, but that one's really memorable. Thanks for the question, Penny.
And maybe just as a continuation to some of the previous line of questioning, Don, on the NOAA side, what would you say is the general time commitment to be involved in science fair?
Well, I think very convenient and easy to provide support. Yeah, it cost a few dollars, but actually all the equipment came back to me later on. So he was just borrowing the equipment that I needed anyway. It was really cool. One of the heavy lifts I've been involved with is on the judging side. And if you want to do a heavy lift, volunteer to be a cluster head judge for maybe both junior and senior divisions at any of the levels. I do Windward District cluster head judging for junior and senior, and it's actually harder than a work day. It's a lot of work, and it's not because of the students. It's working with all those other judges, and you can imagine some judges have strong personalities. There's some large egos involved, so working with judges can be a big lift, but you can avoid that. You can just do regular judging or just do mentoring. So it's totally scalable, and just be good at saying no if you want it smaller than what's being offered.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate that. Maybe this might be a good transition. If you don't mind me sharing I'm going to share my screen real quick, and just to show people how easy it is to get involved. So I shared this link earlier, but I just want to step people through the process now that we are entirely virtual. When a student enters in their initial science fair project and they're doing it online through the student corner, they have the ability to click a box to see whether or not they're using NOAA data, tools, or information in their project. And if they click that NOAA student project box, it gets a little label. So we're able to tell very early on whether or not a student is, they're self-identifying, but whether or not they're potentially using NOAA data. So I remember when Mari and Don sort of mentioned, key places to get involved, maybe get involved early at that brainstorming phase for students. And this is where it could really take place. So they have that label, I'd be happy to kind of look through this, and anyone who's interested, I would love to kind of contact them and see whether or not people might be able to answer student questions. So the virtual world has enabled this ability that didn't happen before. But maybe jumping back to Mari, maybe you can talk a little bit more about your projects that you did, maybe not going into too much depth, but giving some background on what your projects were at the science fair level, and now how that sort of connected to your Hollings program now that you're an undergraduate, and maybe that a little of the progression in time of how that project might have morphed into something now, if it has or not.
Yeah, for sure. So my junior and senior year, I think, were the most connected projects, so I'll just talk about those a little bit. Basically, I was looking at using coral trees as a method for coral restoration. Coral trees were developed by researchers in Florida, but have never been used here, so I was kind of experimenting with that. And my senior year, my mentor, the lab that I was a part of, they are focused on coral reproduction, and so I decided to do something using coral larvae, which is why I started in the summer. And so my senior year, my project was on repurposing coral trees to be used coral larvae and growing out coral larvae in the most efficient and safest way possible. And so that project was a bit interesting. Coral trees are really developed to be used for small fragments of coral. So you take small pieces and then they grow out kind of like an asexual fragmentation process. But I decided to replicate it to be able to hang little piles with settled coral larvae on it. And that kind of really got me very excited about reproduction, which wasn't a direction that I ever thought my research would take me in. But that actually has connected to what I'm doing right now for the Holland Prep program. I'm using sea urchins and their fertilization as a biological indicator of water quality. And so I'm kind of sticking with the reproduction pathway and seeing how that can impact research and that kind of thing. And so yeah, that's what I'm doing now, and I can go into more detail if you want.
Thanks, Mari. That's awesome. I see a question's come in for Dawn on the chat. Maybe this is getting a bit into the details of being a cluster judge versus a regular type judge. And maybe while that's coming up, I don't know if you can see that question in the chat, Dawn, but maybe you can bring up that poll at the same time, Penny, or people can.
Yeah, it's a good question. How much more time is it to be a cluster head judge? It kind of goes in increments. So like if you're doing senior and junior, that's basically double the time of judging. If you're doing cluster head judging, that kind of doubles everything over again, because all the regular judges go home, or virtually they would go home. When we're in person, they would all be going home before lunch, typically. And the cluster head judges would have to stick around for potentially a couple more hours and do more judging, hear more presentations. So kind of double the time commitment to the overall judging duties. But if you just wanted to do a just junior, it could just be a couple hours for one day, basically, out of the year. So it's pretty easy.
Thanks, Don. And maybe as a good segue, so Penny's opened up a poll. If you look if you haven't gotten a chance to use Google Polls, if you look on your lower right-hand corner of your screen, there's a triangle, square, and circle. If you click on that, you should see a poll that pops up. So this is just our feeling, this is not people getting involved in any kind of saying that you're obligated to do it, but just wanted to show the variety of ways that you can get involved in science fair. Everything from, I showed that student corner site early on. So just providing information about NOAA data, tools, careers, etc. Being a science fair advisor or mentor. Advisor is just answering a few questions that a student might have, to the whole mentoring process, to being a judge, to even potentially hosting a summer internship for some of the students that win the NOAA Science Fair Awards. And then finally, we're looking at having an upcoming teacher workshop as well. It looks like the tentative date is October 2nd. So connecting with students, connecting with teachers at this workshop to show the types of NOAA data and tools that they could potentially incorporate into their science fair projects. Yeah, I mean, we're confined by how, I saw the question, can I only make one choice? Just maybe click one that is of most interest to you. And I'm happy to follow up later on if there are other ones, but feel free to we just want to get an idea if folks see that poll, just to capture what your interest might be and a way for us to follow up later on.
Great, thank you guys. And I'm also curious if anyone in the audience has been a judge or a mentor, or even remembers their own science fair career and maybe wants to share about their experiences, negative and positive about that. So I'll just open it up a little bit. Anybody wants to contribute? It's a quiet group today. Don't make me turn on the music. Nobody?
My name's Jennifer Sampson. I am with the Ecosystem Sciences Division as a program lead. And I've been a judge in the Windward and State Science Fair for the past, I don't know, I think maybe since I got here, 6 or 7 years. It's always a super fun experience, I have to say. You know, just for one, it's just a day. It really might have been 2 days one time, but like it's not a lot of a time commitment if you're strictly judging. I think I accidentally clicked the cluster judge once. So I did that unexpectedly, but it wasn't too bad. I would say Dawn was it's like a couple hours, and then depending on how many levels you go to. Something really cool about being a cluster judge, I thought, was you get down to the cream of the crop, right? And then those students get to give another presentation in sort of a smaller group that's more focused, and you really get to dive in deep. And so I found that almost as interesting as the whole array of projects that you're judging. But you have a lot of control. You can pick how many specializations that you feel like you can cover, and so you can really dial up or down your commitment even the day of the fair. So I think that was really nice. And I would plug like your local fair, like if you can pull off going to both the district and then the state, it's really fun to watch some of the projects that move forward, and as Mari said, the improvements they make between the two. So like, yeah, you get a lot out of it, I think. And now the format's changed to online, so I'm a little less comfortable with like saying what the commitment is. But when it was in person, it truly was just that day, and sometimes it was a half a day. I had a question though about like how you find these, how do we make these connections with the students? Obviously, Dawn, you have done it kind of through on your own, but with this presentation, I'm just wondering, is NOAA somehow intervening in the high school or junior high schools in a way that they would know about us and we would know about them? I'm just curious about how those connections are made.
I mean, I can jump in on that, and feel free others to jump in as well. I mean, there are a couple of ways that, so I'll share my screen again, just to show you a little bit more in terms of ways that we can potentially connect. So one that I shared earlier on in terms of a link is the student corner. So we have this basically a virtual corner on there, and we're hosting a bunch of content. This is from last year, but we're looking to add to it. So if you have any data, tools, info to share with students that might be connected to their project, there it is there. They're all tagged by different tags, so it's easy to search. Different NOAA careers. There's a whole bunch of careers on here, citizen science projects, and other educator opportunities. So that's one way of just getting your information out there and for students and teachers to look at it. The other thing that I talked about was that kids identifying, or students identifying, that their project has potentially using NOAA data. So my role as kind of the education outreach specialist is to kind of look through these things, and as they come in, I would love to then be able to filter it out to different NOAA staff that might have expertise in that individual topic, so that they can get involved early on the process. Even if you can't commit to being a mentor, you can maybe at least answer a few questions or brainstorm with the student to really get their project going at that early phase. So that's sort of number two. And then finally, that distinction between, right, getting that project going from districts to state level and judging at districts and providing feedback, I think is another good way to put in. So I'll be, I guess you can think of me as the liaison to, if you have questions of how to get involved in districts or brainstorming with kids, or just posting stuff on the Student Corner NOAA site, I'd be happy to play that role. Hopefully that answers your question, Jennifer. And then I see Nori put some stuff in the chat. So maybe Nori, you want to speak to your experience too. And I know Nori's been a huge supporter of Science Fair over the years. So she probably has some really good insights.
I will say online it is much more time consuming than live. And I do miss the actual interactions with students on that side. Just to follow on really quickly, what Jenny was asking, Court also is happy to connect you to districts contacts as well. They, Hawai'i Academy does request interest for mentors. It's hit or miss because, usually they're trying to do the same thing Leon's trying to do, match the right interests with the right people. So that's another avenue. I think I am probably the one person in NOAA who's had the most Science Fair winter intern interactions, going back to when I was a regional coordinator and was back in the early days. We would give tours to the Science Fair winter of all the NOAA facilities in Hawaii. I would say that beyond myself, I think the only person I know who's more engaged would be Ray Tanabe back in the day, because he was actually mentoring elementary, middle school, and high school students, which was quite an impressive feat. So we went from sort of those early days of just giving tours and exposing them to what NOAA does to actually bringing them into the Science Center to do a true summer internship. Paid summer internship. We've had, gosh, I think 5 students, but we were supposed to have one in 19, and still feel like we need to honor that commitment some way, somehow, but by the time we get there, he'll be a senior. So I don't know what his thoughts will be on that. But anything that keeps their interest in science. And even one of the students was not so much interested in marine science, but wanted sort of technology bent. We worked with that too. My advanced tech group just like having kids, young people that are really interested in tinkering. And so they were really excited. They were building a water catchment system, trying to figure out how to make it really cheap and inexpensive that it could be sent to impoverished communities to generate drinking water. Like, that's not a marine science project in any way, shape, or form, but they were super excited to brainstorm with the student and work up new prototypes to I think our star student is now in his PhD program. He opted out of marine science and went astronomy, but he still very much has ties to the ocean. So, he's the one that his mom keeps us up to date. And he's been a Science Fair winner twice, the NOAA Science Fair winner twice in his young life. And now he's a PhD. I think he's at, gosh, I can't remember. I think he's at MIT getting his PhD, or Yale. And he is giving back to the community as well. So trying to get more of the kids in his connections to engage in enjoying the Science Fair. I think that's the key message is why Don has been really successful at the district levels is you just want kids that are interested. You don't need the the best and the brightest to lead the way. Sometimes it's that really quiet student that wasn't confident talking that becomes one of your biggest success stories and doing great things in the future. And that's the exciting part. That's what keeps me going back. I've been doing the state science fair since the year I moved to Hawaii, so it's going on year 16. And it's been amazing to watch the progression from those early days to today, like the caliber of students, the diversity of students. It's all just so much fun. I will say though, I got tricked into being a, and now I can't get out of it. That is, but being a cluster judge is not as much of a time commitment. Just being a judge is not as much of a time commitment. But in all those efforts, being able to interact with students and teachers that are really interested and wanting your opinion is so rewarding. And a lot of times, like Don said, they're talking about things you have no idea what they're talking about, but they can answer your questions and they can educate you. And that's the part that I find the most fascinating is I learn something new every year. And I think it's great that they've learned how to communicate it in a way that is understandable and shows that they truly understand what they're talking about. That part is always amazing to me. They're so polished and so well-spoken. Even the really shy, quiet ones, they get really passionate and it's just super fun.
Thanks.
Highly recommend being involved.
Thanks, Nori. Thanks for the plug. I did see a question from Jennifer about will it be virtual again this year? I think it depends at what level, depending on what's happening with COVID. I know some of the districts might be in person. I know that my understanding is that pieces of at the state level will be online, maybe the first rounds, and maybe depending on what's happening with COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty, but maybe some of the final rounds might be in person. So a lot of up in the air. But the district level, there might be an opportunity to be some in-person stuff. We'll have to wait and see.
And I see Jean has her hand up. Jean, did you want to have a question or a comment?
I have a comment and a different take on this. I was a district judge 1 year and was so impressed by the kids, the students and their projects. And I felt that there wasn't enough community acknowledgement or exposure to these fantastic projects and the people behind them. So I just want to drop the idea that we have these NOAA facilities, such as the one behind me, Hawaii Ocean Discovery. I know this Justin Umholtz from Mokupapa Discovery Center in Hilo is also on. And I realized that I need to touch base again with the district coordinator for the science fair here in Hawaii. But I think that we could use our facilities to provide an opportunity for the science fair folks to display their projects and talk about their projects to the general public, to just have people be aware of all of the neat kind of thinking and people, students out there, and be inspired by them and give the students a chance to communicate with the public and practice their speaking skills and whatnot. So I think we have resources unique to NOAA and can make these new opportunities available to the public and to these science fair students, and hopefully generate some interest really at the grassroots level, and they can inspire other people, not just fellow students, but the adults. So I just wanted to float that idea. I'll be pursuing that myself once things get back to in person. I think that would be most effective.
That's an awesome idea, and I'm seeing lots of support and some other comments in the chat about that as well. So definitely please fill out the poll. If you can, go to the three little square, circle, triangle icon, do the poll, and then that way that gives us our information that we can give to Leon and give him some more work to do because he's not busy enough as it is. Just kidding. I know you are. Give him some people to coordinate with, you know, put it as others if you want to have a conversation about maybe some other opportunities, and we'll definitely try to get everyone looped into the right places. So we are just we're coming up on the hour, so want to honor everyone's time. Any other last I'm going to put some stuff in the chat, and if you are interested in the presentation, there's an engagement site that's really great that you should check out, and some forms and such if you want to give us some feedback on today, or you want your project to be highlighted. We'd love to hear from you. But I'd like to just open it up. Anybody else? Any of our speakers or anybody want to have some closing thoughts or remarks?
I just want to say thank you for asking me to speak, and it's really exciting that you guys are all excited about doing this, because as a student it really does make a difference to be able to talk to the real scientists, and it's just really exciting to have you guys there. And the idea that was just floated, I would have loved that as a student, so I think that's a great one.
Thanks so much for coming, Mari. Yeah, and providing your insights and stuff. I think it was super, super valuable for people to hear from you. So appreciate you coming today.
Well, we are just about time, so thank you all. Please give us some feedback. Thank you to Dawn and Mari for participating, especially Mari for your own time and contributing to our conversation. Really appreciate everyone's feedback and thoughts, and hope that we can make some more science fair winners.
Thanks, Penny. Thanks, Leon. Thanks, Mari.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Mari and Dawn, too. That was great.
Hey, Mari, you don't need any, I don't need to sign in or do anything else like Hollings prep wise, right? Okay, just checking.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, okay.
So hopefully we'll good.
Are you presenting on Monday? I haven't looked at I can't remember the schedule. Cool.
am.
I'm excited
I
to hear
just
about your
worked
project.
that out with Dawn. It goes well, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks again for your time today. Super, super appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, I'm doing a joint presentation with a Hollings scholar
Cool.
on Monday.
You're going for Hollings? I hope, right? For next year?
I am.
Okay.
I'll be applying next year.
Awesome. All right.
And thank you guys for asking me. I really enjoyed this. So thank you.
All right. Sounds good.
It was fun.
Bye.
Bye guys.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Take it easy.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Good job, Don. Good job, Leon.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, well, I went completely off script. I would in advance. That's what happens. That's what happens when you don't. Yeah.
It's all good. All right, we'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye.